27 years. That is a very long time. Nelson Mandela was in prison for 27 years. Almost half of his life. He lived in a small cell. He worked under the hot sun, breaking rocks. He slept on a cold floor. No freedom. No family. Why was he in prison? Because he wanted something simple. He wanted black people and white people to be equal. He wanted everyone to have the same rights. But the government said no. They called him a criminal. They put him in prison. They thought they could break him. But they were wrong. They could not break his spirit. They could not kill his dream. And when he finally got out of prison, something amazing happened. He did not want revenge. He wanted peace. He wanted to build a better country. This is the story of Nelson Mandela. A man who went to prison and became president. A man who changed South Africa. Let's begin. Nelson Mandela was born on July 18, 1918. He was born in a small village called Mvizo, in South Africa. His full name was Nelson Rolihlahla Mandela. His father was a chief. A chief is like a leader of the village. His father's name was Nkosi Mandela. His mother's name was Nakafino Sakini. She was his father's third wife. Nelson had 12 brothers and sisters. His family was part of the Xhosa people. They were part of a royal family. Nelson's clan name was Madiba. Later, people would call him by this special name. When Nelson was 7 years old, he started school. It was 1925. On his first day, something strange happened. His teacher gave him a new name, Nelson. Why? Because it was easier for English speakers to say. The teacher named him after a famous British admiral called Nelson. This was common in South Africa at that time. All African children got English names at school. The teachers said African names were too difficult. When Nelson was 9 years old, his father died. This changed everything for young Nelson. He went to live in a royal village. In the royal house, Nelson learned many important things. He watched the regent make decisions. He saw how a good leader listens to everyone. He learned that a leader must serve his people. These lessons stayed with him all his life. Nelson went to good schools. First, he went to Clarkberry Boarding Institute. This was a special school for black students. Then he went to Helltown College. Nelson was a good student. He liked to learn. In 1939, Nelson started university. He went to the University of Fort Hare. He studied law. This was very special because Fort Hare was the only university in South Africa for black students. But Nelson did not finish his studies there. Why not? Because he joined student protests. Nelson and other students were angry. The university did not treat black students fairly. So they protested. The university expelled Nelson. That means they forced him to leave. After leaving university, Nelson moved to Johannesburg. Johannesburg was the biggest city in South Africa. In Johannesburg, Nelson saw something that opened his eyes. He saw how badly black people were treated. He saw real racism for the first time. It made him angry. It made him want to fight for change. That means he studied at home and sent his work by mail. He continued studying law the same way. Many years later, the University of Fort Hare gave him an honorary doctorate. They wanted to say sorry for expelling him. But by then, Nelson was already famous. He was already fighting for his people. When European people came to Africa, they brought something very bad, racism. First, the Dutch people came to South Africa. They controlled Cape Town from 1803 to 1806. Then the British people came. They controlled Cape Town from 1806 to 1931. In 1931, South Africa became independent. But this did not help black people. Things got worse for them. In 1944, Nelson met two important men. Their names were Walter Sisulu and Oliver Tambo. Together, they created something important. They created the Youth League of the African National Congress. People called it the ANC. The ANC fought for the rights of black people. They wanted equality. They wanted justice. But their fight was about to get much harder. In 1948, something terrible happened. A new government came to power. It was called the National Party. The leader was Daniel Francois Malin. This government created a system called apartheid. Apartheid is a word that means separation. And that is exactly what it was. White people and black people had to live separately. They could not be together. The government said white people were better than black people. They created 148 new laws. All these laws took away the rights of black people. Let me tell you about some of these laws. In 1949, black people and white people could not get married to each other. Everyone had to write their race on official documents. Black people could not go to the same places as white people. They could not use the same beaches. They could not use the same buses. They could not go to the same hospitals. Black people needed a special pass to travel. Even in their own country. It was like being a stranger in your own home. This system took away all the rights of black people. Black people were 80% of the population. That means 8 out of every 10 people in South Africa were black. But they had no power. They could not vote. They could not choose their leaders. They were treated like criminals just because of their skin color. In 1952, Nelson and Oliver Tambo did something brave. They opened a law office. They were the first black lawyers with their own office. They helped black people who were arrested. Many black people were arrested just for breaking the apartheid laws. Nelson became well known. People started to see him as a leader. But this made the government angry. In 1956, the government arrested Nelson for the first time. They said he was planning against the government. After a long trial, Nelson was set free. But this was just the beginning. Black people started to protest against apartheid. But the government was very violent. On March 21, 1960, something horrible happened. Black people organized a peaceful protest. It was in a place called Sharpeville. They did not have weapons. They were just walking and singing. But the police started shooting at them. 69 people died. More than 40 of them were women and children. 180 people were hurt. The whole world was shocked. But the South African government did not care. Nelson and his friends realized something. Peaceful protests were not working. The government only understood violence. So they made a difficult decision. They decided to fight back. In 1962, Nelson traveled to Ethiopia. Ethiopia is a country in Africa. Why did he go there? To learn how to fight. He wanted to learn guerrilla warfare. That is a special way of fighting. Nelson created a military group. He called it Umkhonto we Sizwe. In English, this means Spear of the Nation. People called it MK for short. Nelson was the president of this group. Between 1961 and 1963, the MK did 134 attacks. They bombed government buildings. They destroyed power stations. They wanted to send a message to the government. The message was, "We will not stop fighting." In June 1964, the police arrested Nelson again. This time was different. The government said Nelson was trying to destroy the government. They said he was a traitor. They said he was dangerous. Nelson went to trial. The punishment was life in prison. That means he would stay in prison until he died. On June 12, 1964, Nelson was sent to prison. He went to Robben Island. Robben Island is a small island near Cape Town. It is in the ocean. The prison there was terrible. It was cold and harsh. Nelson had to do hard work every day. He had to break rocks in a stone quarry. The sun was very bright. It hurt his eyes permanently. He slept on a thin mat on the cold floor. The guards gave him less food than white prisoners. Nelson became prisoner number 466/64. The government offered to let him go free. But there was a condition. He had to stop fighting for black rights. Nelson said no. He would not give up his beliefs. Not even for freedom. So he stayed in prison. 1 year passed. 5 years. 10 years. But the world did not forget Nelson. People around the world started to help. They organized protests. They stopped buying South African products. They put pressure on the South African government. In 1983, something terrible happened. Nelson had been in prison for 21 years. Members of the MK did a bombing. They put 40 kilograms of explosives in a car. They put the car in front of the Air Force building in Pretoria. The bomb exploded. 19 people died. More than 200 people were hurt. The violence was getting worse. The world was watching. The South African government started to worry. What would happen if Nelson died in prison? There would be chaos. So they started to move Nelson to better prisons. They gave him better treatment. In 1989, South Africa got a new president. His name was Frederick Willem de Klerk. He was from the National Party. This was the same party that created apartheid. De Klerk had even defended apartheid before. When he was Minister of Education, he said universities should be only for white people. But now, de Klerk knew something. Apartheid could not continue. The whole world was against South Africa. Many countries stopped doing business with South Africa. The economy was bad. The violence was getting worse every day. Something had to change. De Klerk made a decision. He did not ask his party first. On television, he made a big announcement. He said the ANC and other groups could be legal again. He said the racist laws would end. And he said something incredible. He said Nelson Mandela would be free. On February 11, 1990, Nelson walked out of prison. He had been in prison for 26 years. He was now 71 years old. More than 50,000 people were waiting outside. They wanted to see him. They wanted to hear him speak. Cameras from all over the world were there. Nelson raised his fist in the air. The crowd was so happy. People cried. People sang. Their leader was finally free. Then Nelson gave a speech. He said, "I fought against white domination. I fought against black domination. I want a democratic and free society. A society where all people live together in harmony. A society with equal opportunities for everyone. This is an ideal I hope to live for. This is an ideal I hope to achieve. But if I must, this is an ideal I am ready to die for." These words showed everyone who Nelson really was. After 26 years in prison, he was not angry. He did not want revenge. He wanted peace. He wanted black and white people to live together. For the next 2 years, Nelson and President de Klerk worked together. They created a new constitution. They prepared for democratic elections. Elections where everyone could vote. It was not easy. Some black groups fought with each other. Some white people tried to stop the changes. There was a lot of violence. But Nelson kept working for peace. In 1993, something special happened. Nelson Mandela won the Nobel Peace Prize. He won the prize for fighting against racism and apartheid. He won for his work to rebuild South Africa peacefully. This showed the world something important. It showed that change is possible. After working with President de Klerk for a long time, the big day finally came. In April 1994, South Africa had its first free elections. For the first time ever, black people could vote. People waited in long lines. Some waited for hours. Some waited for days. Old women who never voted before cried with joy. Young people who fought for this moment celebrated. It was a historic day. Nelson Mandela's party, the ANC, won the election. And Nelson Mandela became the first black president of South Africa. He was 76 years old. The man who was prisoner number 466/64 was now the president. Finally, his government had power in parliament. They changed the laws. They ended the time of oppression. They created new laws to help black people. In 1995, President Mandela created something important. He created the Truth and Reconciliation Commission. This commission looked at all the bad things that happened during apartheid. They investigated violence by the government. They even investigated Nelson's wife, Winnie. This was hard for Nelson. This was hard for Nelson. During the time Nelson was in prison, Winnie created a football club. But people in this club did bad things. They robbed people. They kidnapped people. They killed people. This happened between 1988 and 1989. The truth was painful. But Nelson believed the truth was necessary. People needed to know what happened. Only then could they forgive and move forward. Nelson was president until 1999. He worked to bring people together. He worked to heal the country. He worked for reconciliation. That means helping people forgive each other. In 1999, Nelson decided not to be president again. He helped choose the next president. He believed no one should have power forever. In 2006, Amnesty International gave Nelson a special award. It was for his work for human rights. Nelson's personal life was not easy. In 1944, he married a woman named Evelyn Mays. She was a nurse. They had 4 children together. 2 daughters and 2 sons. But the marriage did not work. In 1958, they separated. In the same year, Nelson married another woman. Her name was Winnie Madikizela. They had 2 daughters together. When Nelson went to prison, Winnie became his connection to the world. She visited him. She gave him news. However, the years apart changed things. Nelson and Winnie divorced in 1996. In 1998, Nelson married again. Her name was Graca Machel. She was from Mozambique, another African country. Her first husband was the president of Mozambique, but he died. In 1999, when Nelson stopped being president, he went home. He went to live with Graca in his small village of Kunu. This was the same village where he grew up as a child. There, he created the Nelson Mandela Foundation. This foundation continues to work for human rights today. In July 2010, something special happened. It was the World Cup final in South Africa. Nelson went to the stadium. He rode in a small car around the field. He waved to 85,000 people. Everyone was so happy to see him. They shouted Madiba, his clan name. They played vuvuzelas, special horns. It was a beautiful moment. But this was the last time people saw Nelson in public. When Nelson was in prison, he got tuberculosis. This is a disease that hurts the lungs. It made his lungs weak. As he got older, his health got worse. At 95 years old, Nelson got a lung infection. His body could not fight it. He died at his home on December 5, 2013. The whole world was sad. Leaders from many countries came to South Africa. Millions of people said goodbye. His funeral was on Sunday, December 15th. He was buried in Kunu, his home village. This is what he wanted. He wanted to go back to where he started. During the 27 years in prison, Nelson suffered a lot. But he did something special. He wrote letters. He wrote letters to his family. He wrote letters to his friends. The prison tried to stop him. They wanted to isolate him. But Nelson kept writing. He wrote more than 200 letters. These letters are very important. They show what Nelson was thinking. They show his feelings. They show his hopes. In July 2018, these letters were published in a book. It was 100 years after Nelson was born. The book is called Letters from Prison of Nelson Mandela. The letters show something amazing. Even in prison, Nelson never lost hope. Even behind walls, his mind was free. Nelson Mandela left something very special. We call it a legacy. A legacy is what you leave for others after you die. Nelson's legacy is about fighting racism. It is about fighting for democracy. It is about fighting for human rights. Nelson was a leader in the fight against the oppression of black people. He led a peaceful change in government. He changed the Constitution to protect black people's rights. He helped black and white people live together in peace. Nelson spent most of his adult life in prison. He did hard work. He suffered. But they could not silence him. They could not break him. Nelson showed that Martin Luther King's dream can come true anywhere. He showed that one person can change the world. So what can we learn from Nelson Mandela's life? First lesson, where you start does not decide where you finish. Nelson was born in a country that said black people were less important. But he did not accept this. He fought. He worked hard. He won. Second lesson, some things are worth fighting for. Nelson gave up 27 years of his life. He could not see his children grow up. He suffered in prison. But he never gave up what he believed. Why? Because equality and justice are worth any sacrifice. Third lesson, forgiveness is more powerful than revenge. When Nelson got out of prison, he could have been very angry. He could have wanted to hurt the people who hurt him. But he chose something different. He chose to forgive. He chose to build a country where everyone could live together. This choice saved South Africa from a terrible war. Fourth lesson, change takes time. Nelson fought for more than 50 years. 50 years! That is a very long time. But he never gave up. And he lived to see his dream come true. Fifth lesson, a good leader serves others. Nelson learned this when he was young. He learned it in the royal house. A good leader listens to everyone. A good leader helps his people. A good leader thinks about the country, not just himself. That is why Nelson stopped being president after one term. He believed in sharing power. And the final lesson, one person can change the world. Nelson Mandela was just one man. But his courage changed a whole nation. His vision changed history. His sacrifice inspired millions. He showed that even the worst system can be changed. He showed that hope is stronger than hate. Remember Nelson's story one more time. He was a boy from a small village. He was expelled from university. He was a lawyer who helped poor people. He spent 27 years in jail. He was a president who united his country. Nelson Mandela never stopped fighting for one thing, equality. He never stopped believing in one thing, justice. He never stopped teaching us one thing, forgiveness. Today, when you are free, remember something. Freedom is not free. People like Nelson Mandela paid for it. They paid with their time, their suffering, their lives. So use your freedom well. Fight against unfair treatment when you see it. Help people who cannot help themselves. And remember, one person can change the world. That person could be you. Thank you for watching. See you in the next story. Keep learning. Keep believing. Keep dreaming.